So on Twitter, Chibi linked me a picture about the upcoming episode of God Eater. Supposedly, Ufotable is going to be having another God Eater special episode next week for this series. So you remember how episode 1 was delayed and we had to get like a special episode 0 for when, it was delayed because of production issues? Well, next week, we're also getting the exact same thing. For instance, there seems to be, once again, more production issues, because at the end of the episode, it says next week we'll be getting, like, God Eater Special 01. So, damn, this series is just butchering Ufotable Studio right now. Like, it's straight up just killing them. Because, I mean, they walk into this series, they have to drag in, like, freaking 8 to 12 different anime studios to work on the first episode. And then now, we're getting into this next episode next week, and they're already needing to take, like, a little short break to work on the next episode. There's some serious issues going down with this series for Ufotable having to make these constant specials in between. So, I think this is a good learning experience for their company, but also, I'm kind of scared about how next week's episode is going to look and the reception from anime watchers are going to be when they see next week's episode, because if it's anything like the first episode, they're probably going to have to drag in multiple anime studios to work on that episode next week. So this is kind of a pre-warning for anyone that did not know that. So next week, there's supposedly no episode of God Eater unless you want to watch the special, which most likely I will, but most likely I will not, review it. But no new content of God Eater next week, and also the next episode after that, 2 weeks from now, we might have an episode that could be very similar to the first episode. So now that I've said that, let's talk about this episode of God Eater. So God Eater this week. For the most part, we get a little bit more clarification on the Oracle Cell. We find out that the Oracle Cell is indeed the Origami, and how they are like they are now. So, we get a little bit of slow backstory in the past about, these Origami that's ravaged the entire world. We get some more information along with getting to see how, this new female character got introduced and just kicking fucking ass with her new top weapon. We got to see some really cool stuff in this episode. So, instantly, I want to dive into the Oracle Cells, because that's where the main beef I want to talk about, because that's where the main central plot is trying to drive towards in this series. So, the Oracle Cell, as we know, was discovered by these scientists and all that as like some form of renewable energy. And as we see in this episode, the scientists, as per usual when it comes to humanity, got into experimenting too far and then fucked up, and something very bad happened. So, the overall, I guess, outcome of that was very cliche, because I expected something like that to happen, because scientists went too far into the research, they fucked up, and then now the entire world is paying the consequences for their actions as scientists. And so, I'm not really putting them down for wanting to study these Oracle Cells, because it could help humanity, but that was very cliche with how the scientists fucked up, killing everybody, just so forth, so on. You get my point. But the Oracle Cells, though, from what we see is they can actually communicate with each other. When one screams or has, like, I guess trying to communicate with the others near it, it'll have it to where the others will try to rush over to the other cell, the other Oracle Cell, which in turn is the Origami in this episode. So, let's just put it this way. The Origami in this episode that are flying and eating on the fuselage of the plane, you could kind of consider those as individual cells. Like, just picture those flying creatures as cells, okay? But, on a bigger scale. And when one of them evolves and mutates, you have it to where it gains, like, a command or leadership over the other cells, and if it calls for the other cells, it'll all go towards it and, gather up and attack its enemy. So, it's really weird how that works. So, the cells can evolve, which we got to see a demonstration of that in, this week's episode, in the past and in the future, for instance, present day and the past day, because we see it to how when the scientists were shining this light beam on it, it grew out of proportion, exploded, and attacked them. The main question I wonder is why is these Oracle Cells attacking human beings? That is the question right now. See, there has to be a reason why these Oracle Cells attack humans, because you wouldn't think they would just instantly, soon as they get big, they would want to go instantly after them. Like, why? Like, why are these things going straight after humanity? Is there something that draws them towards humanity? A lot of questions I have, but we also need to wonder, though, since it can evolve, since these, creatures can evolve, how far can they evolve? And what we saw in this episode with that big flying-ass beast at the end, was that, like, the biggest origami in existence? Like, was that the final boss of the series? Like, you know, usually when you play games and stuff, like, I know this is based off of a game, some form of game that's kind of like Monster Hunter, which I've never played Monster Hunter, so I don't know how, you know, Monster Hunter exactly plays, but I know it kind of looks a little bit like Final Fantasy. So, judging by how some of these games work nowadays when it comes to RPGs, or even in past days and stuff, I mean, how RPGs do it, they usually introduce, like, one of the final bosses or final enemies at the beginning of the game for you could see a scale of what you will have to face in the near future. For instance, that flying origami, that was fucking massive. Like, it was really, really big. Like, I can't even begin to describe how big it is. I need to see its entire body before I could really describe how big it was, but it was a large son of a bitch. That's all I will say. And so, is that, like, the biggest they can get, or can it continuously expand? Because if these origami can continuously expand, that's actually not a good thing at all, because let's put this into consideration. If they can continue to evolve and grow in size, like, they continue to just form and grow in size, that would mean that eventually, this is hypothetical, because I don't know a lot about the Oracle Cells or the series in general, but if they do continuously evolve and grow larger, that would mean that the planet itself is in jeopardy. Because if they continuously get larger, there's going to be a point in time to where that thing is going to get so damn big, it might even devour the damn planet. I mean, think about this for a second. If it does get big, I mean, that was a big bastard. I mean, it's nowhere near the size of the planet, I highly doubt, because, I mean, it was big, but nowhere near the size of the planet. But, I mean, if they continuously get bigger, that will eventually, maybe not, you know, present day, maybe 15 years down the road, 100 years down the road, maybe even 1,000 years down the road, it's still an issue, if that is possible and true. So, I like the setup. The episode setup was pretty good. Now, majority of the episode, besides that, was an action episode. A lot of fighting going on, a lot of violence and blood, and this was kind of that type of episode to get the action fans hyped up, because if you play these type of games, I'm guessing, you are used to the fighting and battles and stuff, so I'm glad that we are getting some form of fights, because this is actually good stuff to see, because this is the time when, you know, Ufotable is able to show off the production and animation through these different fighting segments, and that was kind of what was going on in this episode. Now, personally, I enjoyed this episode. It was a very good episode. I like getting to see how we get new demonstrations of this new type. The new type is pretty badass. Being able to, like, have an origami come out of its weapon and eat the fucking other origami and recharge itself, that is really cool. And I wonder how that exactly works. Because if that is an origami inside of the weapon, how does that stay in control to where it doesn't attack humans? A lot of questions. But overall episode, I enjoyed it. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.